All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. As always, your host, Brandon. And this time we have a NAS special. That's right. NIZAAR KINSELLA from Evening Standard, London Standard. I don't know. It's all the same, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, hey, all that matters is it's Naz, the Chelsea reporter extraordinaire. We always have the Matt and Niz shows. I'm excited to get that back this summer. You think you're going to be here stateside?
Yeah, should be. I think the whole tour as well. So plenty of time to be together. It'll be beautiful.
I'm excited for the Ryan Reynolds exclusive I'm sure you're working on. So
Ryan.
Anyways, we're going to be just touching on stuff around the club because as you were saying at the beginning, it hasn't been a really fun season for you to watch Chelsea in the stands this season. I guess go ahead. Let's kick it off there with kind of some summation of the season for you covering it. You've gotten to see some amazing highs. This is definitely the low of your probably tenure covering Chelsea, I'd imagine.
I know, yeah, it's been quite sad, really. I must say, I might not take it in the same way as fans, but I kind of do feel like the pain a lot. You're in the stadium and you see Chelsea dropping points week in, week out, and bad narratives coming out, and you don't want to tell those stories. You want to tell the good stories as much as you can, or at least have a mix of both. But it seems way too much down the negative route, and I think that I kind of it's kind of much harder job really being a reporter when you're always writing negative news. You want to give people some hope, some happiness. That's what football's about, right? It's about joy and excitement and things like that. So I found that bit challenging and stuff like that. So it's been a tough year. And also seeing the boys, I get to see them, especially you think about your preseason tours. It's quite a slow vibe. You get to see these guys, know what they're about, know how hard they work. And stuff just isn't coming together for him. So, individually, all these people around Chelsea, I have so much respect for. I mean, depends, it doesn't matter if they're working in the sort of hierarchy, the top echelon of the club, or kind of youth players trying to push their way in. I have so much respect for all these guys. So, I'm looking forward to them turning it around, turning the narrative a bit more positive, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure everyone will have their day, but this is just a season where Chelsea are the punching bags, and unfortunately, I've had to write along those lines and be quite critical. And in a sporting sense, it has been quite poor, unfortunately.
I've accepted it. I don't even get riled anymore. Maybe a little bit after the World Cup, I was still fighting the good fight, Naz. But it's to the point you can't, right? You just have to accept what it is, and the only thing we can do is hope that it all gets settled in this 8 months between all these new hires in the back office between the next season starting. Because if you learn by making mistakes, you'd imagine we learned a lot this season, Naz.
Yeah. I mean, Chelsea just had unbelievable transition. I've been in businesses that have had takeovers go on, and people do get fired, people do get replaced. It feels as an employee sometimes like, what the hell is going on? And that's a bit of what Chelsea, I think, feels like for some of the players. So, it's kind of normal. You hope that they get to a point where the identity of the new ownership is stamped throughout the club, and it's really a winning one. They want to win. They're trying to win. They're trying to keep that alive. You look at the transfers and it shows intent, but it's just a team sport. You've got to come together, and never, ever also before has the Premier League been more ruthless and difficult as it is this season. I think that Premier League football is the highest level of football. So if you drop off 10%, those Brightons are going to come for you and absolutely nail you. All the clubs are really well run, really well financed. So Chelsea just need to get everything sort of coming together. This is a team sport. It's not even just the squad we're talking. You need top back room. You need everything firing on all cylinders to get this club back up. And of course, they need the manager, which is the big topic right now. Come on, get Pochettino in. Let's talk about him. It gives everyone a hope and a push for the future. So we're just waiting for that last bit of news now. And it feels like it's just a case of go and announce it, really. Go and get him in the building, get him to sign the deal, and then announce it. But it's never done until it's done, unfortunately.
One can only hope at this point. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So if we talk about Poch, to me, it's probably just a timing thing. Is there really anything to gain of announcing it right now? I mean, Lampard did I read that he he publicly turned down the job? Not that he knew he was ever going to get it, but even was like kind of like wiping his hands and walking away from this, obviously not project, but interim duty that he had. Obviously came out with the quotes about Carney Chukwuemeka saying like, look, I got to look after my future. It really is all unraveling right at the very end. Like, can we just skip You're United on Thursday? Can we just skip Super Sunday and like all go on holiday? It's getting bad.
I would love to skip it. Honestly, it's actually really hard to cover. Really hard. Like the level of football is low. I think everyone wants to move on. There's a few good narratives. I wrote about Lewis Hall playing well, but other than that, yeah. I mean, I was in the press room for the Man City game, and it was quiet. There wasn't many journalists there for Chelsea, for Lampard. The players didn't want to speak. They kind of, they got smiles. They're being professional, but they want to go home and get to the end, it feels like. And yeah, sat in the room with Frank Lampard, asked him quite a few questions because there was no other journalists, but very few. We had the Athletic in there, Football London, one or two of the other newspapers, and that was about it. And everyone was upstairs watching Pep Guardiola's team lift the trophy, watching the celebrations and all that. So it felt very strange. I've rarely been covering Chelsea where it felt like a bit of a sideshow, but hey, you've got to use this as fuel, right, to push. And yeah, with the Lampard thing, he was kind of asked in the press conference if he would work as a sort of sidekick for the new manager, the next manager, and he said no. Like he probably wouldn't be welcome. And the other thing is like he wants to be a head coach. That's his whole thing. So yeah, I think that was an item. I think people have got quite upset about his Carney Chukwuemeka quotes, haven't they? Where
they have.
He's sort of saying, he's our player. We've got a right to use him. And I want to clarify something actually on this pod. This is actually Chelsea's right, like, legally in the football legislation, they are allowed to keep players if they want outside international windows. So yes, maybe it would have been better for Carney to go and play a few more minutes for England under 20s, but yeah, I think that it's Chelsea's right to keep him, and Lampard's in a position to do so. So, yeah, I think also part of the problem, I think that some of the sort of Twitter conversation was quite accurate on it. I think Lampard has sort of surprised people. He's made sort of short-term decisions as an interim to try and benefit himself, to kind of look good. He's not this kind of coach that he was before, bringing the youth through, giving them quick chances and stuff like that. Got 2 games to try one win over a big team, be it Man United or Newcastle, just to maybe enhance his reputation. So understandably, in the circumstances, you probably are going to be a little bit selfish. And it doesn't matter if you're a club legend or somebody who has no connection to Chelsea. You've got to take your chance. Football is very few chances at this level. So I think that what he's trying to do is, I'll keep Carney. He might be important in a game off the bench, and fans are frustrated because he could be starting for England, right? And getting better development maybe. So, yeah, it's a tricky one. If you had a long-term manager in, you could maybe make long-term decisions, but they have a short-term manager in who's making, guess what, short-term decisions.
100%. That's what I was talking about in our group chat as well. If anyone wants to be mad, they need to be mad at the leadership of the club. Like we're in this situation because of the decisions they've made. Like, I think Lamps probably once Real Madrid was over and he just saw how broken the situation is, I'm sure that's when he realized, like, it doesn't matter what I do. I can't build anything in 7 games, whatever it is. Like, it just is what it is. I need to keep my reputation intact. And we have seen that. And remember, everyone was like, why is Ziyech playing? I'm like, Lampard was key in signing Ziyech. He likes Ziyech. And like, it's not really a surprise. Pulisic has seen 5 minutes plus stoppage time this entire run. And maybe he hasn't been fit. We don't really know. Benoit Badiashile hadn't really played, but now we find out he's got an injury thanks to you, Naz, which we'll touch on a little bit. But I get it. And like, if people are upset that short-term decisions are being made, like, look at the situation we're in. No, like, there's no one there to govern it any different. And there was no, who was the longtime assistant, Steve, who's in England, Holland, to be there to kind of create that continuity there. It doesn't exist. So we'll have to wait and see. We're going to take our first ad break. When we get back, more on Lewis Hall and kind of how Naz has seen him go, and then why we're going to miss Badiashile for a lot longer than we thought. Thanks to sponsors. We'll be right back. All right. So my boy Lewis Hall, a center mid that moonlights as a left back and a left wing back in case of emergency break glass. You had a great article outlining Lewis Hall, the fact that he hadn't played a long time and all of a sudden just pops up and has to play against the reigning champions. Well, I guess as they were crowned. He has not hurt himself. Has he been brilliant every single minute? No. But like, if this is his secondary position in the Premier League, like, wow, that is so impressive.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you forget how young he is as well. 18, man. Like, it's a wonder kid status, this 18.
Most of the dev squad, right? They're like 19, 20, 21 at that age. And he's just out of high school or primary and playing with grown men at the top end of the Premier League table.
Exactly. This is when he made his debut for Chelsea. He was still playing cricket with his mates. Like he, professional footballers aren't allowed to play two sports, but he was so young that he had a cricket team as well. Then he's brilliant at cricket. Apparently, he can do everything at cricket, which is kind of similar to how he is at football. He's kind of this all-rounder who's pretty technically sound, like physically strong as well. My one concern is maybe his engine. He needs to get that up a little bit for wing back. And Frank Lampard was saying, and this was some of the questions I was asking him about Lewis Hall, that he needs to be more vocal. Like he's not got that kind of like leadership presence on the pitch yet. He's quite an introverted character. So I think that needs to come on as well. But you can learn those two things, the engine and the talking side of things. There's many introverts that are world-class players. So I think that he's been a really good, positive outcome from this season. Not looked out of place in the 9 games. I mean, he's looked better than a lot of the senior players, a lot of the new signings, people like that. And I think sometimes when it's an academy player, we almost expect too much, or we think, oh, we can just send him out on loan and forget about him, and maybe in 2 years he'll be even better. But you've got to say that he's kind of like, it was a sink or swim to play against Man City, and he's sort of swam, really. He's obviously not the best player on the pitch, but he played against Riyad Mahrez, who I think's a real world-class winger. So he absolutely did brilliantly against Mahrez. There's one bit where Mahrez tried to skin him, and he made a really well-timed sliding tackle, and it was like all or nothing tackle, and he timed it to perfection. He created the best chance of the game, most touches in the opposition box, most chances created, 2 great shots. One of them took a really good save from Ortega, who's a really good shot stopper, the City backup goalie. So, I think he's a really good player, and he's played 9 games for Chelsea this season. He was in the team sort of in the winter period during the injury crisis, and he played against Man City in all 3 games. Of course, Chelsea lost them, but he played well in those games. He outperformed Rico Lewis, who is considered a top prospect in England and for Man City in those games that he played. Played against Newcastle, played away at Newcastle, away at Fulham, away at Liverpool. This man only takes on the hard challenges. Like he's not exactly playing the easy games, is he? He's not playing, Bournemouth at home or something like that. This guy's getting chucked in at the deep end. And again, Man City away when they're winning the title. So, he looks really good. I'd be really excited about him, and I hope. And Chelsea need to be careful because they've already got a big squad. I hope they give him space to thrive. And the article had a bit of that. Like, there's 2 left backs ahead of him at the minute. There's also Ian Matson, who's a great prospect. So how's that going to work? You've got maybe signing a new central midfielder as well. So that knocks him down the pecking order. Like, if Chelsea care about him and think he's good enough, I think he's good enough. But if they think he's good enough, they have to give him a little bit of space. And Pochettino's a kind of manager who likes homegrown. I'm learning a lot about that recently. He really likes the homegrown guys. He wants English guys part of this team. So there needs to be a little bit of space for Lewis Hall or people like him to come through. And he's the only breakthrough academy player really this season. So it's even more important that he gets a glimmer of hope in this first team.
Well, and maybe you can expand on that because, like, again, Chelsea fans are going to say, yeah, he's been in the academy. He loves the club. Like, he wants to make a name for himself. We even saw the Man City on Sunday. They put in Rico Lewis, right? They put in a bunch of players with 80s in their numbers, guys that aren't seeing a lot of minutes. But Pep was like, go out and prove to me that you should be in the Premier League in my team. And they did that. Same thing here. Lewis Hall's like, wow, what an amazing opportunity. I can either show Chelsea I'm good enough or show other Premier League teams that I'm good enough. But then on the pre-match presser, Lampard says only some players are showing commitment to Chelsea. This was your article from Friday. Is there more context to that, or like how are you interpreting Lampard's words in that? Because I think as fans, we definitely were like, duh. Like obviously, I also empathize with the players. I feel like the club has put them through an extreme amount of adversity this season as well. So like I tend to balance it out, but is there like, I guess, how do you connect the dots between the two, maybe with Lampard's pre-match presser?
Yeah, I think that Lampard's been quite cautious about giving young players minutes, and then, but at the same time, he's kind of complaining that players aren't showing enough passion or aggression, and you kind of say that's probably more the older players who are frustrated with the situation, maybe have options to move abroad or to other clubs or whatever, that he's kind of speaking about like that, and I think that maybe the youth players can be a sort of answer to that problem that he spoke about pre-match, that some of his players, he wouldn't name names, but some of his players, he's not as happy with their commitment, the way they're playing, the effort they're showing. Of course, Chelsea don't have a lot to play for late in the season, but I think fans just want to see players showing passion, making tackles. Like the Arsenal game, the Arsenal first half, for me, that was one of the most unforgivable moments of football I've seen, and a lot of the punditry around it was correct. Like just to not make tackles is just unbelievable to me.
It's fundamental.
It's fundamental. And for the 3 goals, I remember only Noni Madueke, who hadn't even got near the team at that point, only he made a tackle to try and stop any of the goals. And I'm like, got to at least try and make a tackle. And Noni's tackle was poor, but he's not a defensive player, so it would be. But it was just like, God, at least he tried. So it's those kind of moments I think Lampard is talking about, where you're talking absolute basics. Like if you don't do that in amateur football, you'll get screamed at by your captain. So yeah, I think that if you have youth players, they'll automatically do that because they're trying to prove a point, and it's difficult, I think, for some of the stars who are now battling in mid-table with nothing to play for to do those things because they expect better and they're really frustrated. But they've got to do it because Chelsea fans are paying their money. They expect a lot. They want something to be proud of, at least on a 90-minute basis, just to hang on to for next season. So I think that, yeah, maybe Lampard could have been brave with some of his lineups and just been like, look, you're not putting the effort, you're out. So, then you get Lewis Halls in, maybe even more guys down the academy. I'm sure Phil would want a lot more of those guys too. So, yeah, I think you're always going to guarantee it with those kind of players.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it with Connor. Lampard's loved Connor. And I bet if he had Mason would be playing as well. But, long-term fitness there, maybe some contract issues. But those are the types of players who are stepping up in an adverse time of the season. To your point, a lot of these established pros looking ahead to the summer, they want to go in healthy. No one wants to go in with an unnecessary knock. Kova is probably just sitting around trying to get healthy right now, which, to be fair to him, long-term of the club is more important. These games don't matter. I think, yeah, as fans, we would have liked to see a little bit more rotation. Some of the names that continue to get trotted out, and you're kind of like some moans and groans a little bit. I don't know. We'll have to see with 2 games left, but excited to see Lewis Hall and some of the others step up and shine in these opportunities. And to be fair, there have been some key players that have shown up and continued to work hard. I thought Enzo ran his socks off yesterday, even though there wasn't much going on.
Yeah. I think Enzo's been probably a slight bright spot really in the season. He looks like he can do it. I think everyone's sort of convinced by him, aren't they? And he can do all different types of jobs, which is great. Lampard picked out Ruben, who I didn't think play that well yesterday, but he did put himself about a bit. So I think it was an uptick, but we don't want to get carried away by these sort of small improvements. And we don't know, how do you measure yourself against Man City second string? You don't really know, but Lewis Hall definitely looks decent. So I think that's the only thing I could have written about from the match was he looks good. He looks good, man.
And that's the problem, right? It's been a season of inconsistency. You get bright spots, even with Ruben. We've seen some great performances. We've seen some performances to forget. Part of that is the inconsistency. Trevo's come in, and I'm like, man, he looks so good at right back. To your point, Lampard now puts him at left center back. We're like, okay. And like, what does that mean for these players? Like they're just getting chopped and changed and moved all over. We're playing a back 4 a couple weeks, and we play back 3, then back to back 4. Like watch United probably go back to back 4, even though I think, aren't you guys playing back 3 most of the time?
No, I think
back to back 4. All right. So he's going to line up and try to match. Like I'm predicting it now, right? Like more changes for United on Thursday.
I know, and no team's made more changes than Chelsea in that sort of way. So, and a lot of them are enforced. we talk a bit about the medical in a minute, and there's so many injuries. And actually, I was looking at the injury table before the match, and Chelsea were already top. And then João Felix pulls out of the warm up. So it's just like constant. Like it is kind of hard. It's sort of symptomatic of a club in chaos. Lampard's trying to find some sort of formula. He's not found it. He's not going to find it. We know he's not going to find it. We might as well forget about it now. It doesn't matter what formation he plays, but it just feels like it's not working. I think even. And I actually skipped a few games, Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest, but I watched the extended highlights of both. And yeah, you look at those games and you feel like the Forest draw is a decent result, but it's not. It's not. And then the Bournemouth one, they had their chance as well. So it was like they had their chances just before Chelsea scored. So it's like, man, everything's a lottery right now. It's like the best Chelsea could do is hope to get a lucky win, maybe fight. The character of the team is becoming a fighting mid-table team. There's no quality or teamwork in there. And that's what Pochettino needs to bring and what he does. And you look at Guardiola and you have to be envious, but Pochettino attacks in a similar way to Guardiola. So those automatisms that they call it in football, the slightly wanky word that technical people in football use, the sort of automatic movements, the passes, the triangles, the things that make Man City good to watch, especially in that Champions League match against Real Madrid. Pochettino brings that, and that's what Chelsea absolutely don't have. Lampard is just putting guys on the pitch, picking an 11, and hoping somebody brings a moment of magic. I mean, we were just hoping Sterling scored on the counter-attack, or maybe Lewis Hall got a good crossing that would work on the day. And it was like, you're just hoping for a moment of magic from a player. But football's changed. You don't do that anymore. You need these more sophisticated models that Pochettino will bring. And hopefully, and I think the only way is up, but hopefully it'll make a big difference.
Again, Lewis Hall is not used to playing down the flank and whipping in crosses. He's used to being in the middle and hitting bangers from the top of the box. All right, go check out Phil and I's dev squad in U18s on the Cobham crew. But we're going to take our last break when we get back. Going to talk a little medical injury stuff with Naz. So thank you to the sponsors and we'll be right back. All right, Naz, you just opened the door on the medical department. You kind of broke this one, didn't you, with Benoit Badiashile? We've got up on the website saying that he's going to miss the start of next season in a massive blow, 4 months out with a groin injury. Is that right?
Yeah, it should be. So they think they might need surgery, but we're not 100% sure yet. But yeah, the groin injury is worse than expected. So he'll miss preseason, probably miss the start of the season. It's a massive shame, but I think that maybe, it'll be able to handle it because he'll probably only miss a couple of games maybe. And another Chelsea have a lot of defenders, so hopefully somebody else can step in and fill in before he gets back.
So what's up with the medical department? I've heard a lot of chopping and changing, had an interim person who kind of worked with some professional athletes on the side. Then they brought the person back in who they had sacked. What's your understanding of the medical department? It seems like it's a huge Achilles heel of this team because it has been inconsistent all season with who's there. And I think we've seen more players working with personal trainers than ever before at Chelsea. And maybe that's just social media and things like that. But clearly you were talking about the injury table and things like that. Like we all know it's been a big concern. We had the run in the mid 2000s, right? Where Chelsea would go seasons without a soft muscle injury. And here we are. It seems like we have a new one every week.
Yeah, I think it's been a huge concern this season. I think the owners have tried to change every department really at the whole club, but the medical department, they lost, or they sort of sacked the two most senior guys, the doctor and the head physio, and they've sort of not really replaced them yet. They've got like a sort of consultancy firm in who is sort of doing that. They have got some staff in, some consultants in, some guys from rugby, English rugby and things like that coming to fill their place. But just the staff turnover has been huge, and I don't think that it's really settled in yet. The department's not firing on all cylinders. So I think that there's some concern about that behind the scenes. And you look at the numbers and it sort of bears out as well. Just the sheer number of injuries. And the worst ones are the ones where like, yeah, you can get injured in training, a bad tackle, you can get injured, but like you said, the muscle injuries are a concern because they seem to be preventable. Clubs like Man City are playing more matches than Chelsea, and they've got everyone fit except NIZAAR. And Chelsea have got people falling over left, right, and centre. The other issue is sort of the re-injuries that we've seen. We've seen Reece James come back and get injured, and that costs you actual points when a player of that caliber comes back after a 2-month injury layoff and gets injured in his first match back. That costs you points. Wesley Fofana had the same as well. I think Reece James's personal trainer came out and complained, sort of did a cryptic post that it's a genre of content we have now. Somebody does cryptic post, which sort of was criticising Chelsea's return to play protocol. So those are kind of concerns. And then now we've got Badiashile added to the list, quite a bad injury. We don't know really if that's anything to do with the medical department. It would be just speculation, but the sheer numbers are a cause for concern. So overall, yeah, I think it's an area, Pochettino said, Potter said that, he admits that things aren't quite right and that needs to be looked at. You need to improve on that, those records. And yeah, Chelsea are going to try and improve on that, and they need to, because you can't imagine how many points this has cost Chelsea this season. It really will be concrete, and it's a huge factor. And when the players come back from injury as well, they're tactically not available. They're tactically not in tune with the team. They need time to get match fit as well. So that just disrupts the whole thing. And it's been a huge part, actually, I think, of the picture of Chelsea's failed season is this injury crisis, this constant injury crisis. So I think Chelsea needs to get on top of it, really. And yeah, when Lampard's saying that you can't compete with Brighton because they're physically dominating you on a pitch over 90 minutes, it's not good enough, is it? So need to get that sorted. It's urgent, really.
Well, again, I would just say a lot more information on Naz's article about Benoit on the website. So go check it out there. Kind of what you said, you go into more depth, because I gotta ask now. Summer's coming, July 1st, transfer window. It's gonna be open. A lot of us fans are a lot more worried about who's leaving than coming in. I feel like overall we've got a pretty good squad. I think Chelsea, with the right buy-in, the right manager, some things like that, I think there's a couple key areas, no doubt, that we need to fix. Got to figure out what's going on with the goalkeepers. I think figuring out what's going to go up top as a striker needs to happen. But like, how are you sensing this summer is gonna stack up? Any concrete departures? Any concrete links of things coming in? If I see Vlahovic for 80 million euros, I'm going to lose my absolute mind. I'm hoping that's just all too soon to really be concrete, but there's a little bit of smoke out there about Chelsea looking to sign players in the transfer window, which is crazy to me. We have the most bloated squad ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's going to be way more about sales. Everyone I've spoken to, close to the club, in the club, whatever, it's just saying it's about sales, especially initially. There's kind of like a little bit of a soft deadline of June the 30th as well to get players out. Chelsea need to pick the right ones. I think you kind of raised concerns that if Chelsea sell the wrong ones, you could be regretful. And Chelsea just played against Man City, who have De Bruyne, who I think is widely regarded as a Chelsea regret for obvious reasons, that he's world class. So selling him was maybe a mistake. So it's trying not to do that, right? It's trying to get the right ones out as best you can. I think Chelsea's kind of plan is the older guys who have got less time on their contract, they're pretty much going to go. I mean, you look at somebody like Mateo Kovacic, who's one of the captains, don't forget Chelsea, but Chelsea barely made any efforts at all to renew his contract, and he's got 1 year left. So it kind of shows you that, and it's no slight on Kovacic. I'm sure everyone at Chelsea absolutely loves Kovacic. He's a great pro. I know he's not playing well, but a great pro, potentially great. He's got great, Man City are interested in him. So it shows you he's a good player, right? But it's just a sort of admission that certain players need to go. And then the good thing about selling players as well, and it might seem a bit bittersweet because you got to love Kovacic, scored some great goals, had some great moments, won some trophies for Chelsea, but you've got to create space for the other ones to grow, right? And we talked about Hall earlier. That's how you create space, is sort of slimming down that squad and making room. So it's about picking those guys. There's going to be, like Ziyech has 1 year left in his deal. They'll try and sell him. But in the January window, they had a chance to loan into PSG and they ran out of time. So I think the difference is now is that Chelsea are actually going to put in the time and effort to properly get these players out. People like Aubameyang might leave for free. They might try and get fees in for Ziyech. Clubs might try and get him for cheap off Chelsea. We know Loftus-Cheek has major interest from AC Milan. AC Milan are not likely to pay a big fee for Loftus-Cheek, but it will all be profit on the account. So these are the kind of options Chelsea have, and you kind of have two options as well, in that you can sell to a rival and make more money, or a Premier League rival, or you can sort of sell them abroad and make less money, but at least they're not playing against you every week, or you might not be as embarrassed if they do well. So there's kind of those two considerations as well, is like, who do you sell them to? That's a big thing that Chelsea are going to have. I mean, I remember Conor Gallagher had a bid from Newcastle on deadline day in January, and Chelsea didn't accept it, or didn't even reply to the bid, because they didn't want him to go to a European rival. Chelsea were competing for Europe at that point. And they were ready to let Gallagher go to Everton, but not to Newcastle. So it kind of shows you what Chelsea are going to be like a bit this summer. And also then you've got Pochettino thrown into the mix, who I'm told he actually likes Gallagher. So Chelsea might be ready to sell Gallagher, but is Pochettino going to negotiate to keep him? There's all these moving parts. It's going to be fascinating.
Without a doubt, we'll definitely have to see. Obviously, I'm going to ask about the goalkeepers. Kepa can tell me how great of a season he's had personally, but I still, watching Man City's backup, making me go, wow. I think we'd take him right now. And it just goes to prove that there's levels to the game. And in this season, I'm happy for him, but not for the team. So Mendy seems to not be interested in signing his contract extension. Do you feel like one of those two will be gone this summer, or they're still going to have to ride it out and continue to try to figure out what to do next season?
Yeah, I think it's way more likely that Mendy leaves than Kepa, just because I think Mendy will have like way more offers. It's because his wages are a lot more accessible, so overseas clubs can afford him. I don't think any club will pay Kepa what Chelsea are paying him, and that's the problem. And it's always been the problem. Chelsea tried to sell him in almost every transfer window except in the last year, pretty much. So it's kind of like he's seen as like inaccessible. Like the only clubs that can buy Kepa, probably like the 5 richest in England, Real Madrid, and PSG. I think that's it, like on wages. So, and they're not going to give him that sort of role. None of those clubs will make him number one. But I think Mendy will get those offers. So yeah, I think Mendy will be sold. Chelsea will have 2 strong goalkeepers next season competing. And I think that'll be the way they go. So yeah, I think they would be happy to sell Kepa. I know that some people have written that, but I just don't think it's realistic. So I haven't really written about that subject. So I think Mendy is getting big interest already, and Chelsea don't want to make him. I don't think Chelsea want to build the goalkeeping role around Mendy. He's not played. I think Chelsea feel ready to let him go, and I think Mendy is also sort of ready to go. So I think it's kind of just a natural development. It's not, no one's got any beef with anyone else. It's just sort of what's happened.
All right, home run time, Naz, for you, or whatever they call it when they hit it out in cricket. Mason.
Yeah, I think Mason, everyone wants him to stay, right? But you've got to get the deal done. The only thing that might help is Pochettino, but it's not looking too good right now. But it really would take like Pochettino making a big effort, the owners making a big effort, giving him kind of what he wants to an extent.
Do we know what he's asking for? What the impasse is?
There's loads of aspects to it, like financially. You look at Reece James, probably a benchmark, £250,000 a week. Mount's 2-time player of the year, so he's probably got some claim to that. Some fans would disagree. He's the most polarizing player going, but there's an argument for that, right? And then certainly there's loads of other things, like Mount's always in commercial adverts for Chelsea, like making money for Chelsea. They use him all the time because the old contracts under Abramovich, you could do unlimited commercial, but now Mason, I guess he wants to control his image rights a bit, and sort of get hold of that. So a lot of the new players like Enzo has sort of options to do that as well. So kind of those are the negotiations. There's loads of sticking points and length of contracts as well. So there's many aspects to it. And don't forget also, all the players are getting a 30% pay cut because they're not in Europe this season, or many players. So that's another factor. Like, where does he rank in sort of non-qualification for Europe? So there's loads of those little clauses that need sorting, and it's just not gone well, the negotiations so far. And it's about relationships, right? And they've not been going very well at the minute.
All right. Scale out of 1 to 10. 10, Mason's gone. Absolutely never see you again. 1, he's absolutely staying. Where do you kind of land on the scale right now? As of today, caveat, as of Monday, the 22nd of May, in the early hours in the US.
I think 6, but also there's a third option where he stays, but he doesn't renew. And I think nobody's written about that. And I've tried to write about that in my pieces. And there is a third option, which is kind of an irritating option, but also it's an option that Pochettino, I think, would be comfortable with. He'd fight until the final minute, I think, to try and keep Mason. So don't discount the third option.
But that's such a financial risk. All right. I totally understand that. Naz, you're the man. Way to be on top of all this. We'll have to get you back on, continue to do it. I'm super excited to see you in a couple months as well, stateside. We'll make sure to take care of you as always. But yeah, keep up the good fight. Check it out. Naz, links in the description. A ton of stuff over at the Standard Sport. Go check it out. His articles are for free. Just need a little login account. But anyways, Naz, keep it up. We'll see you, in the WhatsApp for your Man United Chelsea, the London is Blue Naz derby on Thursday.
Yeah, we're nearly there as well. So let's get over the line.
Awesome. All right. Well, have a good one, everyone. Chelsea fans, more content coming at you. So until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.